Hello again, and welcome back to Politico's Competitive Europe Summit. My name is Jan Chansky, and I'm a senior policy editor in charge of defense policy at Politico. And I'm delighted to close our summit today with the best for last, Andris Kubilius, the EU Commissioner for Defense and Space. Welcome. Thanks very much for joining us. And I guess I'll jump right in with an issue that we were both at the Warsaw Security Forum earlier this week, and it's an issue that sort of popped up today here as well. The Commission has talked about building a drone wall. It was part of Ursula von der Leyen's State of the Union speech a few weeks ago. There seems to be some confusion about the scale, the speed, the cost of this thing. Can you bring us up to speed? What does the Commission actually have in mind when you talk drone wall?
Well, definitely we do not have in mind, traditional wall.
So it's not Europe's Maginot Line?
No. Well, first of all, what we need to have in mind. First of all, Commission President, of course, she named drone wall as part of Eastern Flank Watch. That is title of broader, defense concept, how the border with Russia can be better defended from EU side, from member state side. And those initiatives were coming perhaps since even last year. Here was an initiative by interior ministers of so-called exactly drone wall, how to have more capacities to protect border against illegal migration. During the summertime, if I'm correct, during July, defense ministers of Poland and Baltic states appealed to Commission with, at that time it was called Baltic Defense Line or something like that, and they asked exactly support for two major components. One is, ground wall. We can say something like Maginot Line, but maybe more modern, which would allow to have all the contra-mobility measures on the ground, like anti-tank trenches, like those Dragon Ts, which, as it was shown in the recent practice in Ukraine, that is quite effective, if that is built smart. But second also was what the ministers asked, to have something like drone wall equipment. And the evaluation of, at least if you look into their paper, evaluation was that for those countries, Poland and Baltic states, some kind of this drone wall equipment, first of all, detection systems, because you need to have radars, special radars, you can have acoustic sensors, and then, of course, equipment to destroy drones like anti-drone interceptors, like electronic warfare means, like traditional, Zenit artillery or machine guns. The cost was around of 1 billion euros. So after provocation against Poland, when we saw everybody around of almost 20 drones were sent to Poland, definitely this topic of drone wall became very, very high in priority. And last Friday I had a video conversation with the ministers from this frontline, what we call frontline countries, and also Danish minister was participant. And he was very strong wish and will really to build those capacities, because what this provocation against Poland have shown, what drones intrusions into my country, into Lithuania, into Romania, are showing that we lack really capabilities to detect drones, and then really to have cost-effective capabilities to destroy drones. Reaction to provocation against Poland was very effective from NATO point of view. Aircrafts, were immediately scrambled up. But the means which were used to destroy drones, million value missiles, perhaps is not what we need really to have. So we see clearly perspective to build this, what we call now drone wall. Whatever, we can change the title if some misunderstanding is coming from that. Quite quickly, especially some initial stages, like really building detection capacities. And it would be good to have this as a regional project in order that those detection systems would communicate in between of each other, in order to have for us, clear picture. And well, some experts are saying that the whole drone wall in its significant build during 1 year period, I think that for detection capabilities, it's even less what is needed.
Now, when you were on that panel in Warsaw and with Boris Pistorius, the German defense minister, he wasn't anti-drone wall, but he was skeptical if this was the best use of limited resources. We heard similar concerns from French President Emmanuel Macron today, who was also wondering about the feasibility and the priorities on the drone wall. Are you worried that there's a lack of political buy-in, or that there's skepticism on some countries as to whether the EU should go ahead on this scale and speed with a project like this?
Well, I see. Well, of course, discussions always are good, and we shall discuss. And the same Pistorius, he said, well, that's, to defend against drones is important, but he was maybe wondering what is that project really about. I would say, first of all, NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte repeatedly said, this is really very important to develop, and NATO themselves, they are doing some kind of testing on those frontline territories, equipment which can be the best one. Because I can repeat that we understood that our capabilities to detect drones, we have good capabilities to detect air fighters, we can, maybe we have good capabilities to detect missiles, but drones demand specific capabilities. So Mark Rutte was very strong in favor of development of such kind of project. And then I can see very clearly, some kind of, we can make conclusions. The countries which faced provocations with drones, they are very strongly, in favor of building something. The countries maybe which are still not, were not facing some kind of those problems, they are, of course, it's rational to ask the questions, but it would be strange for me if we would not build capacities to defend ourselves now against the weapons which Russians are using, in the war against Ukraine, and what Ukrainians are saying that Ukrainians are good in drones and electronic warfare, but they recognize that Russians are as good as Ukrainians. And at the moment, I saw one NATO country, European one, which published recently very important document, so-called strategic review of their defense doctrine, and that is the United Kingdom, where they put very clearly in strategic perspective what should be their defense or military doctrine. And they used a very interesting title, 20-40-40. 40% of targets should be hit by light drones, by kamikaze drones, another 40 by heavy drones, and only 20% by traditional heavy technique. And this is exactly what Ukrainians are saying about their experience. 80% of targets are hit by drones.
So what do you think, looking at what happened in Poland, the overflight in Romania, what's happening in Denmark, there are German reports from today about their tracking of these overflights of the drones. What's going on? Are these probes by Russians? Are these disconnected things where there's no strong proof of Russian involvement, but people are jumping to conclusions? What do you think is happening?
Well, I think that this is, deliberate provocation or testing what Russia did, especially when we're talking about Polish experience. Those were not lost drones, because of electronic warfare, instruments used by, for example, by Ukraine. It's very clear that, drones had special, fuel, tanks, much larger in order to fly exactly towards, distance of Poland. And, well, we can guess, what is the aim of such kind of provocation. Is that testing of our abilities, how we're able to detect and to defend ourselves. So really we see the problems which we need to resolve. So in some way we can, I don't know if that would be proper word to say, we can be grateful. We showed what are our problems. The question is why we were not paying enough of attention during the previous, at least 2 years when drones started to be used very, very intensively in the war against Ukraine. And second question is that what is next? And I would not be surprised if we shall see bigger scale of those provocations. Still, how to say, being below Article 5. And even if we shall build our capacities to destroy those drones, always will be the question, what is our political answer? And what we need also to see, that the goal can be also in some way of Russian side psychological. Because what I saw being in Warsaw and talking with people and talking with media, definitely when the country is getting 20 drones intrusion into the territory, people are simply becoming nervous because they don't know what is next. And that is why definitely the governments and all of us, we need to build real capacities to defend ourselves, to destroy those drones, whatever numbers will come, in order really to show our people that they can be safe and not be nervous each day, waiting what next can come.
In Warsaw, the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, said there was some sort of a war had already begun. You're saying that it's very difficult to know, but there could be more provocations. In light of that, how confident are you of the backing of the United States, of the US involvement and interest in European security under Donald Trump? Is this still a reliable ally?
Well, I would not discuss maybe about reliability. Sometimes, of course, we are discussing what does it mean, what they are saying. But we need to, as Europeans, we need to rationally accept the logic of Americans. When they are asking us that Europeans, you should take much more of responsibility on European defense, because they, as Americans, they see other challenges, global challenges like rising Chinese military power, and they need to shift their resources towards Indo-Pacific. So we should not look into such kind of perspective with a lot of emotion, that we cannot, trust Americans and so on. This is new stage, new global development, stage, which we need to understand and we need to accept, and we need to build our capabilities also, having in mind that we shall need not only to defend ourselves against possibility of Russian aggression, but also that we shall need to replace American assets which they were keeping here. And maybe we can agree, we can look for agreement with Americans on some kind of calendar issues. How they will, shift their resources towards Indo-Pacific, when it will come, because definitely for replace their capabilities, we shall need to invest. It will take time, and so on and so on.
The EU's pushed through the 150 billion euro safe loans for weapons program. You're working on the final trilogues on the EDIP program. Is that enough? Should the EU look to create a common defense market? Is there more that can be done to try to make the defense market more efficient, to step in and fill the gaps that the Americans leave behind? Well,
I would say that since the beginning of this commission, and my job as commissioner, we spent those months building what I call opportunities for member states to develop their capabilities. Financial opportunities, like you mentioned, SAFE, some kind of industrial policy instruments like EDIP, legal, diminishing bureaucracy with omnibus on simplification. Now time comes for next stage, which I call delivery. And here is exactly where important role will be played by so-called roadmap on defense readiness, which is now started to informally to be discussed in the UCO and then at the end of October.
Which the leaders talked about today, right?
Yeah, today, yeah. And then, formal decisions should be made later at the end of October. And this roadmap should very clearly, needs to have very clearly timelines. When and what we need to deliver. So more or less we know what we need to deliver, from NATO capability targets. We need to have aggregated demand picture.
So drilling down to the specifics, like air defenses or artillery or ammunition. So you've got actual targets that this
we need.
Will be.
We now have those 9 areas of strategic domains. I'm looking that we need even more specifically say in that domain what kind of weapons we need to develop. Then we need to have. We shall look for some kind of mapping of production capabilities. How much we can produce. If there is shortage, then we need to use our instruments from EDIP, how to support expansion of production. So that would be very important. And then, of course, second question is how to deliver in the most effective way. Who is playing what role? What national governments, what role they're playing? What role is played by Commission, by ES, by European Defence Agency? Again, we need to have very clear institutional understanding. And then the last question, of course, will be how to finance. So what we did with safe loans is important, but definitely 150 billion is not enough. Looking into the future, I'm quite assured that we shall have really big defense financial resources from national defense spending. If to take into account that member states pledge to spend 3.5%, and they will reach that target before 2035. I am taking next MFF period, 8 years or 7 years, from 2028 till 2035. If we shall accept that member states for that period can spend around of 3% of GDP in average, at first lower than larger numbers, 3% annually from EU member states will be around of 600 billion per year. 7 years it will bring 4.2 trillion euros. Okay, not all money will be spent on equipment, salaries, pensions, around of 50% can be, but nevertheless we shall have quite a big amount of money, 2 trillion, for example. The problem is that those money we need to have now, not before 2035, because we are speaking about defense readiness 2030, not just for some kind of symbolism, but because we know that Putin can wage an aggression against us, against the NATO member states. It will take for him next 3 or 5 years to be ready. So that's why we need to be ready to defend ourselves much sooner. And we need to find a way how we can, I would call front load maybe those money, but that's, again, the question for what I call for financial engineers, to find the best way.
And I guess also to better coordinate procurement so that you're not wasting money. So that these things
absolutely. This is what we need to keep in mind always. What I'm saying is that while building our defense capabilities through production, through procurement, on national level, we need to keep in mind also structural problems of European defense industry, which were very well described by Draghi in his report. It's fragmentation of the industry, it's lack of single market, and that is why our industry is not able to use power of big market to develop their competitiveness. Then we are losing in global competition and so on and so on.
What role do you see for third countries? This has been a sort of a tricky political issue. How wide do you open the door to the UK, to Canada, maybe to Turkey? How do you exclude a lot of the US? Does that create political blowback from the Americans? How do you see that whole debate shaping up?
Well, I will not maybe tell all the details. The last safe regulation is most open, regulation which we have had for participation of third countries. Now negotiations with Canada and UK on those bilateral agreements, technical agreements, are going on. I hope that they will be successful, and it means that Canadian and UK defense industry will be considered like European. That is one thing. With other countries, of course, there are specific issues. There are possibilities for industries which belong to United States, for example, if they are established in Europe, really to participate. But what we need to remember, what I am saying always to our American colleagues, that they need to remember that European Union money spent from the budget or like safe loans are just a small part which will be spent in Europe on defense, because majority of money will come from member states. Like I said, we shall have maybe during, till 2035, more than 2 trillion euros, which member states will spend on defense, when our next projection to MFF is that we shall have, for space and defense around 130 billion euros, which means that for defense we shall have around 50 or 60 billion euros. So on one side we have 2 trillion, on the other side we have 50 billion, and national defense spending is not regulated at all by EU. If member states will decide that they want to buy American weapons, they will buy. We can incentivize them with our EDIP program and with our finances in the budget to incentivize them to spend money in a joint procurement, maybe more for European production, but that is only incentivization, not a regulation.
We're running out of, or have run out of time, so I'll just ask you one last short question. Are we going to be able to do this in time? I mean, the intelligence assessments say that Russia, as you'd said, could be ready to attack in 4 or 5 years. You come from a frontline country. Are you confident that within those 4 or 5 years, Europe can do the job and actually stand up for itself?
I'm absolutely sure that we can do the job, but definitely everybody needs to understand that it demands different approach, different speed in our political decisions, in negotiations, in debates in the parliament or in the council. That is what is needed. Everything else, I am absolutely sure we can do. We can learn a lot from Ukraine, which builds their capabilities during the war. So for us, it's better to build our capabilities before the war.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking part in the panel. And thank you very much for hanging on till the end and for a very interesting conversation.
Okay.
Thanks
a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging on till the end. I think the key takeaway from today's session is there was, when Mario Draghi did his report about a year ago, there were fears that this would be one of these sort of worthy reports that would gather dust on a shelf. And I think that today's session and what we've heard from panels is it's clear that that those worries were perhaps overblown, that Europe has woken up, but it's also clear, as we heard from the Commissioner now, that there's still an awful lot to do, that the time to compete in a much more tooth and claw type of world, whether it comes to agriculture, to trade, to energy, and to defense, that Europe really has to wake up on a host of different fronts and reorganize itself. I think that another theme that really came through in today's panels is that there is still this desire, while making Europe more efficient, working better, is to retain innate characteristics of Europe. That came through with the European Central Bank Vice President Luis de Guindos, who said, simplify, don't deregulate. So I think the message coming through is that don't expect a massive revolution. You want to improve the functioning, but not completely junk it. I think that, that came through again with the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister, Taras Kachka, who welcomed the effort to streamline procedures to join the bloc, but it's clear that Ukraine wants to join a functioning EU and not one that's undergone a dramatic revolution. And again, as we heard from the Commissioner and from the Defense Procurement panel earlier today, is the overall conclusion is that Europe is awake but has to move much, much faster. On that note, I'd like to thank all the speakers who took part in the first day of the summit, as well as the moderators and the crew, and again to thank the partners for making the summit possible, leading partners ASML, Bayer, EFPIA, and Google, presenting partners Lilly, DP World, Revolut, and Santander, and knowledge partners McKinsey Global Institute. We are excited, and I hope that you're excited as well, that having lasted for so long, there's a happy hour reception where you can get some drinks, and that'll be held from now until 7 p.m. in the main networking room. We hope to see you there, and we also look forward to seeing you all tomorrow for day 2 of the summit. Thanks again.